Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. By viewers like you. Thank you.
The weather is expected to change in the days ahead, but right now, wildfires are the immediate threat. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi, and tonight, some evacuation orders are in place for parts of remote East County. CAL FIRE is among the agencies responding to the Coyote fire that broke out this afternoon in the Potrero area, and that is near the Mexican border. Dark smoke can be seen from miles away. Evacuation orders are for those who live in backcountry homes near the fire. Mountain Empire High School in Pine Valley is temporary shelter for evacuees. CAL FIRE says the fire started around 12:30 this afternoon and has burned 200 acres so far. The immediate risk is to homes along Horizon View Drive and around Potrero Road. And so far, there are no reports of any damage. And it's not just fires threatening our county. Hurricane Hilary is packing winds and drenching rains that could reach San Diego this weekend. Such storms are extremely rare for our region, and that has local agencies preparing for the worst. KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson begins our coverage.
Hurricane Hilary could be the first to hit San Diego in more than 100 years. It's nearly as rare for named storms to hit the county. The National Weather Service says that's only happened a handful of times.
1976, Kathleen, 1977, Doreen, 1997, Nora. So there's not many that we can look back historically that even have a forecast coming right at us.
Tardy says a Pacific storm off the coast of California and a heat wave in the Midwest are creating an alley for Hilary to move straight towards San Diego. Hitting land and cold ocean water could weaken the storm, but the system will still bring strong winds and drench San Diego regardless.
And we're not used to rain in August. We usually have almost no rain in August, and we haven't seen much rain overall for weeks, if not months.
San Diego Gas and Electric crews are bracing for the storm's arrival. Utility crews are preparing in case the wind and rain bring down power lines or cause power outages.
We're not only just making sure that we're staffed up and that our crews have the resources that they need. So when I talk resources, making sure that they have all their vehicles, their tools, any necessary equipment that they might need to make repairs, but they're also on alert.
Welling says efforts to make the grid more resilient in the face of a rising wildfire threat will help during the storm. Utility has replaced wooden power poles with steel, put some lines underground, and added thicker insulation to wires. He says SDG&E hardened its backcountry power system to help deal with strong Santa Ana winds. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
And we continue our look at the potential impacts of Hurricane Hilary. KPBS reporter Melissa May says you may be more prepared for the upcoming weather than you think.
Remember this? Well, those heavy winter rains actually prepared the community for Hurricane Hilary.
Reach back to that and say, what were the problems? What bothered me? What inconvenienced my lifestyle? And then mitigate those.
Chris Heiser with the Office of Emergency Services for the City of San Diego says to plan ahead of what you might need through Monday.
Think through the what ifs. What if the power goes out? High winds can result in power outages. Heavy rains can result. So am I ready for a power outage? Do I have enough battery life on my cell phone so I can maintain contact with family members? Do I have backup batteries for my laptop so I can maintain my situational awareness?
He says the rain will likely flood areas that normally flood, like Mission Valley, and warning signs will be displayed.
So the first thing we'd ask is, if the signs are there, they're there for a reason. Don't become part of the problem.
Also, if you don't have to be out, don't be out. But if you do, drive with extreme caution.
When it rains, the freeways get slick, and you'll see a significant number of traffic accidents. It's okay to slow down. It's okay to recognize that hydroplaning is something that's extremely hard to recover from.
The city has an emergency dashboard on its website where the public can monitor the storm and find resources.
So what we tried to do is grab a spot where we could pull in all the different resources into one page that then you could just click on to get the information. And so it is weather-centric, weather radar, weather hazards.
Depending on when Hurricane Hilary makes its way to San Diego, the city's Emergency Operations Center will become a coordinated support hub with representatives from the police and fire departments, the water departments, even the financial department. From Kearney Mesa, Melissa May, KPBS News.
Well, all eyes are on Hurricane Hilary, well to our south. We're going to be watching as this storm continues to strengthen over a zone of warm water with limited wind shear. This will become a major hurricane way to our south. And then over the course of Saturday, we will see some gradual loss in wind energy here, a little bit of weakening because of that cooler water. But it's going to be a big flood producer into parts of Southern California, with the worst of the flood potential likely to our east. We are very concerned about this. You can see the wind speed forecast. We can see gusts of 40 to 60 miles per hour. More on this story coming up with your full forecast.
Crews are continuing the heart-wrenching task of searching the disaster zone in Maui. At least 111 people have died and possibly more than 1,000 remain unaccounted for. Laura Aguirre has the latest.
A lack of timely warnings and a siren system that stayed silent, among many issues being investigated in the deadly fire's aftermath. Maui's emergency management chief defended his decision not to sound the alarms.
Do you regret not sounding the sirens?
I do not. Even if we sounded the siren, it would not have saved those people on the mountainside.
The comprehensive review that I've asked the Attorney General to do will include that.
Make me cry. Make me cry. And over 20 years I staying in my house.
Many returning residents barely able to cope with what they're seeing.
It's hard to take in, just seeing all this devastation. I don't know what to think.
Hawaii Governor Josh Green says it's possible over 1,000 people remain unaccounted for. This is Maui police report that less than half of the burn zone has been searched.
We have more than 40 canine teams. We've got hundreds of search and rescue personnel that are going through the burned areas.
The governor also promising to block those who try to exploit vulnerable residents.
My intention from start to finish is to make sure that no one is victimized from a land grab. I've instructed the Attorney General to work toward a moratorium on any transactions.
The realtors, everyone who's trying to snatch land, take a step back.
I'm Laura Aguirre for KPBS News.
In recent days, we've shared stories about people doing what they can to help those affected by the fires in Hawaii. The Southern California chapter of the Red Cross is part of those efforts. KPBS talked with local Red Cross CEO Sean Mahoney. He's met with Hawaii's governor and visited the worst damaged areas. Mahoney says it's still a fluid situation as relief agencies work to reunite people.
We've had 2,200 calls from people to the American Red Cross that say, I can't find my loved one. I don't know where my loved one is. And, their loved one might be in a Red Cross shelter or a partner shelter. So, they worked very, very hard to make those connections. And they've done 5,500 connections like that so far. But every single one of those calls takes, hours of work.
The Red Cross is also working to help people transition from shelters to hotel rooms. Mahoney says financial donations are the most effective right now. The Red Cross homepage has details on several ways to give, either online or by text message. A runoff election is appearing more likely in the race for District 4 San Diego County Supervisor. San Diego City Council President Pro Tem Monica Montgomery Stepp's lead grew in the latest count to 41%. And founder of Reopen San Diego, Amy Reichert, is holding on to the second spot with about 29%. Janessa Goldbeck released a statement today saying while there are still thousands of ballots to count, it appears her campaign does not have a path to victory. With no candidate receiving a majority of the vote, the top two appear headed for a runoff election on November 7th. District 4 has been without a county supervisor since Nathan Fletcher resigned in May. A Marine charged with sexually assaulting a 14-year-old girl in his base barracks room was in a Camp Pendleton courtroom today for a preliminary hearing. Here's KPBS military reporter Andrew Dyer.
Private First Class Avery Rosario was brought into a Camp Pendleton courtroom today in shackles. The Marine faces 3 counts of sexual assault of a child over the age of 12. According to his lawyer, it was June 28th when military police found a 14-year-old girl in his barracks room in bed asleep. Video of Rosario being led away in cuffs circulated online, and the girl's aunt went viral on TikTok, saying her niece had been the victim of sex trafficking. However, private messages from Tinder and Instagram between Rosario and the girl show she told him more than once she was 22 years old. Her Tinder account listed her age as 21. That's something that can swing the case.
That is a valid defense. If he had reasonable belief that she was of age, then that would be a legal defense.
Gary Barthel is a former Marine lawyer, now in private practice. While he is not involved in this case, he says based on the text messages and statements the girl made to authorities about her age, it will be a difficult case for the government to prosecute. Whether this case proceeds to court-martial is now up to Rosario's regimental commander. Andrew Dyer, KPBS News.
Today, the city of Poway started enforcing an ordinance banning people from camping on public property. The ban allows sheriff's deputies to cite people who refuse a shelter bed and confiscate unlawful personal property within 24 hours' notice. Homeless advocates argue that even if there are beds available, the nearest shelter is 15 miles away. Poway City Council passed the encampment ban last month, shortly after a similar ordinance was approved in the city of San Diego. A new safe parking site is set to open in Vista tomorrow. The program is meant to help people get out of their cars and into stable housing. KPBS North County reporter Tanya Thorne says the city also wants to keep people from losing their homes in the first place.
People living out of their cars will soon have the option to park in Vista's first safe parking site. It will operate out of Vista's Civic Center.
We're expected to have 25 spots available for participants, and it's expected that 25% of program participants are families with children.
Vista Council member Katie Melendez says it's something the city didn't offer before and is the first site off the 78 corridor. North County's second safe parking site is in Encinitas.
So instead of sleeping in residential neighborhoods or unsafe parking lots, folks that are sleeping in their vehicles and experiencing homelessness will be able to come to a safe, secure location with services and hygiene amenities so that they can get a good night's rest and eventually get into a better situation.
Jewish Family Services will be running the program. Safe parking for approved participants is only from 6 p.m. to 7 a.m. and security will be on site. Interested participants must pre-enroll and be screened by Jewish Family Services. Getting the safe parking site in Vista took almost 2 years, and Melendez hopes the city will do more when it comes to prevention.
I believe that there are many people in our community that could benefit from short-term emergency rental assistance to stay housed and prevent homelessness.
At a recent council meeting, $1.4 million in rental assistance was approved for families needing help with rent, utilities, or property taxes.
The City of Vista will be putting out a request for proposals for a non-government organization to administer those rental assistance funds to families in need. Families will need to income qualify for the assistance and show proof of loss of income.
A pilot rental assistance program was set up during COVID, and all the funds were used. Melendez says the city also got a $5 million grant for a shelter with more privacy options.
This type of shelter is really important because many people decline our congregate and traditional shelter models. But with a non-congregate shelter concept, people have a more individualized space and a more trauma-informed approach to their recovery.
The city will continue discussions on that shelter in October. Tanya Thorne, KPBS News.
An experiment in North County to help teachers who are struggling to afford housing is starting to pay dividends. The Grower School in Encinitas is using recently acquired land to offer homes at affordable rents to new hires. Ryan Stevens recently graduated college with a STEM degree and just finished his first year of teaching. At first, he didn't know if he should take the job because he wasn't sure he could afford to.
If I do go into teaching, will I be making a lot less? Will I be able to afford to live in San Diego? Just being able to not have to worry about finding housing like that, just knowing that it's there and it's secure, is just such a weight off of people's shoulders.
The hope is that teachers can save for a few years and then buy a home. As the impacts of climate change worsen, homeowners insurance is getting more expensive. It's also harder to obtain in states considered to be at high risk of natural disasters, and that includes here in California. Ivan Rodriguez explains the factors driving up costs and what homeowners can do about it.
With more than 2,200 homes and businesses destroyed or damaged in the Maui wildfires, according to the governor of Hawaii, the struggle to rebuild will be long and costly.
From the ashes, we will survive.
It's the latest in an unfortunate trend, the devastating increase in both the severity and frequency of natural disasters. And insurance companies are taking note, raising premiums in some cases, and even pulling out entirely from disaster-prone markets like Louisiana and California.
Well, there's been a very difficult combination of an increase in risk with more drought, heat, wind, flood, in combination with migration towards the highest risk areas.
Another factor driving up the cost of homeowners insurance, inflation.
Everybody's paying more for construction materials, housing, rebuilding costs, labor, and so on. So even if you take the perils out of the conversation, they're still going to see an increase.
So what do you do if your rates are skyrocketing? David Martlett with the Brantley Risk and Insurance Center says companies are more likely to insure homes with features that protect it, like a fire-resistant roof or storm shutters. You can also look for alternative coverage options.
You need to contact probably an agent in your area. They would be your first source of maybe finding another carrier that has entered the market, or they can help you get coverage through the state-run market of last resort.
I'm Ivan Rodriguez reporting.
The average interest rate for a 30-year mortgage in the U.S. has reached its highest level in 21 years, 7.9%. Just a year ago, it was 5.13%. Not only do high mortgage rates make it more expensive to finance a home, they also make homeowners who locked in lower rates more reluctant to sell, and that also drives up the prices.
Well, we are closely following and tracking Hurricane Hilary. This is the big story right on through the next 4 or 5 days here into Southern California. And as we look back at the history books, kind of an interesting chaotic map, it shows the track of the center of various storms that passed either over or near Southern California in the past 70 years or so. And in the 60s and 70s and also in 1999, a flurry of near storms. And also last fall, here's Kay that pulled that hard left turn and stayed offshore, but it brought some rain to the area. You might recall back in the fall. But we're going to look at this in greater detail. There are also some other weather stories that we don't want to ignore, including the heat. Very hot in the inland areas, but cooling begins on Friday, and that cool down will continue into next week thanks to tropical moisture from Hurricane Hilary. The greatest potential for flooding is going to be in inland areas. But right now, again, it's still hot out there. Heat advisories for areas like Julian and into areas around Pine Valley. Borrego Springs and points east are under an excessive heat warning. But that is going to be a situation that improves as clouds increase later tonight. We'll get down to 67 degrees, and Friday will not be as hot. Still steamy. Into Borrego Springs, 107, Ramona, 94, El Cajon, 90 degrees, 76 into San Diego. Pretty decent day, slight increase in cloud cover. Let's move forward in time, though, and you can see a surge of moisture begins to sneak into view here as we step deeper into Friday evening and Saturday. Look at this. The clouds increase. Some scattered showers break out across the interior. The main event is later in the weekend, Sunday into Monday and Tuesday. So we expect strengthening of Hilary to continue through Friday. Saturday, the process of weakening will begin due to cooler water, but it'll still have some wind energy potential. It may even be a true landfall in Southern California as a tropical storm, perhaps, but the flooding is something that we are more concerned about. From a wind standpoint, we expect locally 40 to 60 mile-per-hour gusts on the second half of the weekend, Sunday night into Monday. But the rainfall, look at this, 1 to 2 inches possible for San Diego, but you get into the interior and there could be 4 to 8 inches for some. That's going to lead to some flooding. That's the #1 concern out of this system, and this storm will have a high risk to lives and property who are unprepared if you put yourself in flooding's way in the interior. That's a big concern. Washouts, mudslides, and so forth, all big concerns. Coastal forecast, here it comes Sunday into Monday. Tropical storm conditions possible. Temperatures backing off a bit. Inland areas, wind and rain, very humid out there Sunday and Monday. Be prepared for this. The mountains, wind and rain out there. Tropical storm taking temperatures down significantly, and the deserts drop from 107 to 83 with thunderstorms. And you can only do that, for the most part, with a tropical system this time of the year. I'm meteorologist Jeff Cornish for KPBS News.
For years, performance artists, theater groups, and dance companies in the South Bay have worked tirelessly to bring the performing arts to life in their communities. But as KPBS South Engagement producer Maria Elena Castellanos tells us, limited funding makes it a challenge.
And I spoke Shakespeare before I spoke English.
That's Chula Vista resident William Alejandro Virtus, remembering his first audition at the Old Globe Theater when he was just 9 years old. That was the start of his passion for the performing arts. Today, he's the artistic director and one of the founders of the multicultural theater company Teatro Máscara Mágica, known for their production of the Christmas Shepherd's Play. Virtue says putting on a play can be expensive.
How can you afford it? Lights, sound, you see, look, this is an animal that breathes 24 hours a day.
And finding a place to perform, that's another challenge.
You know, the shepherd's play, La Pastorela, is a metaphor for us. It's an analogy. It's like we're the same shepherds looking for a home. We've been looking for a home forever and ever and ever.
Still, Teatro Máscara Mágica has performed for decades in San Diego County without a permanent venue. Virgie says he would like to find a space in the South Bay.
And we have to show these kids the passion. Without exposure, people won't know any better. If you have never seen that ballet, you'll never miss it. If you've never seen an opera, you'll never miss it.
The issue of finding space isn't unique to Chula Vista. That's Pasakat, a Philippine performing arts company based in National City. Ana Maria Labao Clabato is the executive director at the helm since 1987. She says the nonprofit doesn't have the means to support full-time employees.
I don't know if it's a cultural thing, but we become resourceful and make do with what we have. And we find joy to continue what we like doing. And we've never skipped a beat. We've never skipped a junior concert, 36 years in a row.
The dance group owns a building in National City that's used mostly for rehearsals and storage. But Cabato says the building needs repairs, and it's hard to secure funds.
When you're passionate about something, that drives you. That lights the fire under you to keep moving, to keep going on, to striving for better.
And I wanted to follow up on the discussion of the almost entire lack of culture and art in Chula Vista with some recommendations and some explanations.
That's Christine Brady, a Chula Vista resident of 25 years. As an arts advocate, she's worked with many artists searching to rent out cheap venues.
Within, just say 1 week, we would have 3 producers of productions come and want to rent the space, but there was an in-house group that wanted to use the space, and there was basically nothing available.
Brady proposes creating an affordable arts venue on the west side of Chula Vista, but that takes money. Some experts say cities already face a number of financial constraints, and the arts often fall by the wayside. This fiscal year, most cities in the South Bay allocated less than 2% of their budgets to the arts. But money for a new venue is just one part of the solution. Experts say the venue has to be financially sustainable while also affordable to local artists. In Chula Vista, Brady feels optimistic. The city has a new mayor and city council, and at a recent meeting, some leaders expressed support for the arts. Brady hopes that support will lead to investment.
They need protection. Their value needs to be recognized.
Maria Elena Castellanos, KPBS News.
And we want to update you now on our top stories. A wildfire threatening homes in Potrero near the Mexican border has grown to 400 acres now. CAL FIRE says the Coyote fire started around 12:30 this afternoon. It's 0% contained at this point. Evacuation orders are in place for those who live in backcountry homes that's near the fire. Mountain Empire High School in Pine Valley is the temporary shelter for evacuees. So far, there are no reports of any damage. And you may be better prepared for the potential impacts of Hurricane Hilary than you might think. The City of San Diego's Office of Emergency Services says heavy winter rains prepared the community for upcoming storms, but they did offer these tips. You can expect flooding in areas that normally flood. If you have to go out, drive with extreme caution and keep backup batteries in case your power goes out. You can find more resources on the emergency dashboard on the city's website. And here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. It's back to school time in San Diego County, and that's the focus for this week's KPBS Roundtable, airing at noon Friday on KPBS Radio. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.